And you're on.
Thank you. Good evening. We have already started the meeting in open session before going into executive session. We are now reconvening in open session. Per Governor Baker's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, the public will not be allowed to physically access the school committee meeting. Members of the public can access the meeting via Montague Community Television broadcast. The extension of the emergency open meeting law provisions were signed into law as Chapter 20, Section 20 of the Acts of 2021. The school committee also reserves the right to implement additional remote participation procedures and will notify the public of these procedures as it is practical too. Members of the public wishing to join the meeting may do so by accessing the link on the Gill-Montague Regional School District website. It can be found under School Committee Notices and Agendas for upcoming meetings, and it will have tonight's school committee meeting date on it. We are live streaming as well as broadcasting on MCTV, and a recording of the meeting will be available on MCTV and the district website after the meeting. We'd like to welcome any visitors. This would be an opportunity for public participation because policy BEDH has been reinstated to hold public participation remotely. We don't have anyone this evening who's wishing to do that. If you are in the Zoom audience, please keep your camera and microphone off. Thank you. Okay, Brian, important events.
So the high school and middle school open houses are this Thursday evening, September 22nd. The middle school open house will begin at 5 p.m. and the high school open house will begin at 6:30. Friends of Sheffield meet on Monday, September 26th at 6 p.m. Wednesday, September 28th is an early release day. The Hillcrest open house, and I do appreciate that the principals got together to schedule the Hillcrest and Sheffield open houses on the same evening so that parents wouldn't need to do multiple arrangements for childcare. Hillcrest will be held Thursday, September 26th from 5 to 6, and Sheffield will follow from 6 to 7 p.m. Friends of Gill meet on Monday, October 4th at 5:15. Monday, October 10th is Columbus Day, and there will be no school. The Turners Falls High School Booster Week will be held Thursday to Thursday, from Thursday, October 6th through Thursday, October 13th. And at our next meeting, Sina will join us to report out on some of those activities and events because they'll be there in the middle of the week. At the end of that week, on Saturday evening, they're planning to host a high school night in Vegas homecoming dance in the same area that they did it in the courtyard outside of the cafeteria on Saturday, October 15th from 7 to 10 p.m. And then there are 2 consecutive early release days on Thursday and Friday, October 20th and 21st for parent-teacher conferences.
Any questions for Brian about that or any other information? Sometimes school committee members will get information about other events and let us know if you ever do. Okay, thank you. And as Brian said, Sina is our student representative and she'll be joining us next time. I know this time of year is a really busy time for the students getting things organized, and she'll let us know how the week is going. So Brian, superintendent's report.
So yeah, once again, oh, sorry, Nick.
Gill School has their bonfire on October 14th from 5 to 7.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Anyone else? Okay, thanks.
So I wanted to take a moment to recognize a couple of people. First, we're not actually recognizing them here. It's the state, and I want to thank Gene Powers nominated Tina Mahaney for the MassQ Administrator Award. Is presented to a Massachusetts administrator in recognition for visionary leadership in the field of educational technology. The administrator's efforts have gone above and beyond in providing inspiration to other administrators and educators. Gill-Montague Director of Technology, Tina Mahaney, is the only one receiving the Administrator Award this year in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. She will receive the award at a celebration the night before the MassQ conference at Gillette Stadium on October 18th. And I just wanted to take a moment to read the blurb that Jean had written to come along with the award. As well as the Director of Technology, Tina is also a leader amongst the administrative team. In some districts, the Technology Director only weighs in on items directly related to technology. This is not the case with Tina. She is a leader that the entire administrative team looks to for feedback, insight, and support. During the pandemic, Tina noticed that teachers needed extensive professional development related to the flood of online resources and the need to teach remotely. She shifted an elementary teacher into the role of technology instruction coach. Tina then focused on the infrastructure and support of the students and families at home. Tina has always been a director that focuses on instruction and integration. It is not enough for educators to have access and devices. Tina ensures there is learning and professional growth for all faculty and staff. She sees the big picture as well as the details. Jean Powers, who nominated Tina, says, "Working with her is a gift, and I value her leadership and support in my work every day." Tina, I totally agree with that statement, and it is an absolute pleasure to work with you, and I'm glad that you're finally getting the recognition at the state level that you so richly deserve. Thank you for all your hard work. There she is.
And that's when my technology failed on me.
Yeah, that's good timing on
Thank
keeping
you
yourself
so
muted.
much, but it's really having the strong admin team, and the fact that this year was full of innovations, right? And it was wonderful. It's inspiring to work with all the teachers and the administrative team and the school committee. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tina. Congratulations.
Just so amazing. I just can't begin to say how much I have very little knowledge of what I'm doing with these machines, and Tina just always helps me without making me feel like I don't have any knowledge.
You've been wonderful. Thank you.
Congratulations, Tina.
Thank you, Tina. The Culturally Responsive Practices Leadership Academy dates. Some members of the school committee expressed a possible interest in joining the team of educators at the offerings for the Culturally Responsive Practices Leadership Academy. The dates and times are in the superintendent's report. And if anybody from the committee is interested, they really prefer to have a single school committee member rather than rotating through, so that the team has some consistency to it for the purpose of informing decision making when we get to the end of the grant and the process. So if anybody's interested, please let me know by email. And I know people might not be able to make every one of those dates, but it would be wonderful to have some school committee representation on this group. And then the last item is I wanted to announce that on Friday, September 30th, Executive Assistant to the Superintendent and School Committee, Sabrina Dupre, will retire. Sabrina has served children, families, communities, and staff at the Pioneer Valley District, Greenfield, and East Hampton school districts. For the last 6 years, Sabrina has supported the Superintendents and School Committee here in Gill-Montague. Her knowledge, professionalism, and kindness will all be missed. I'm deeply appreciative of Sabrina's skill and support, and I wish her well in the next chapter of her life. Thank you very much, Sabrina. And again, I'm in the process of searching for a new assistant, and Sabrina is also assisting me in that process. So I appreciate her help as she's making a big life change, but incredibly valuable work that she's done, especially for a new superintendent to come in, to have somebody with her level of experience was just invaluable, and I appreciate all of her support. And then, oh, sorry, Jane, you're muted.
I hit that by accident. I must have been doing something else. Yes, I'd like to express that too to Sabrina. She's been so valuable and so helpful to the committee all the time that we will certainly miss her.
And in terms of COVID trends, Franklin County is back to being rated by the CDC as low risk of transmission. I'm going to continue to post these numbers in the superintendent's report for as long as the school committee would like. And if we need to make changes, we're in pretty constant communication with the support that we get at FERCOG right now through Robin Neep, who's working with us along with the Board of Health and trying to put some data measures together that include school reported cases we send to her so that she can combine that with wastewater checks and other survey and monitoring tools to try to get a sense of how present the virus is in our town. So I will keep adding this to the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Brian? Okay, thanks. Business and
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, just on that point, is there a bar that you're keeping a line in the sand where a certain number that triggers a change in school policy, or is it just for general awareness related to the COVID test monitoring?
It did start out that way, Christina. In the early days, part of the reason that we put this together was we were in a process of bargaining to get out of remote and get back on campus. And then we just kept it as a means of being able to monitor the presence of the virus in case we needed to make changes. But no, there is no threshold. And that was one of the things that we had discussed with the regional health coordinators, as well as superintendents from other school districts, that, even the Department of Education didn't really give clear guidelines around what we should be doing. I think the most that we would be looking to do, at least in the short term, if we're seeing this sort of fluctuation in data, is to consult with both DESE, the Department of Education, as well as the regional health coordinators, if we're finding that we have outbreaks in school. But there's nothing in terms of a hard and fast threshold for even for informing families or encouraging masking because there's a greater presence of virus in the district.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
It is something, however, that we could revisit at any time if we need to. I know we were pretty flexible and consistent in our approach previously to keeping up with what needed to happen.
Thank you.
Okay, business and operations report, Joanne.
Okay, there's a few things that are under business, and so I'm going to skip over those in my report, and we'll talk about them when we get to the business items.
Yeah.
Thank you. Rural school aid is just something I want to notify you that we were awarded that. So when we built our budget for fiscal 23, we assumed that we would be getting some rural aid because we had gotten it for a couple of years. And we assumed that we would get about 45,000, which is what we were getting in the past years, right around that amount. But this year we were awarded almost 70,000, 69,708.49. So we have 45,000 of that allocated to cover the cost of our SRO. And then the rest of it, we'll figure out what we're doing with that. So there's different priorities to how they fund this. And so the more rural schools receive a larger amount of money per pupil. So a school like Mohawk or like Pioneer, they're much more rural than us. So they get, I think Mohawk got somewhere in the range of 260,000 to our 69,000. Pioneer got 175,000, but we'll take the 69,000. We'll take it, and it's still helpful. And because we did build some of that into our budget, I'm really happy that we got it. But we do have about 25,000 to figure out what to do with, so we will be working toward that. The next item I have is the use of capital funds toward the Hillcrest floor replacement. So when we replaced the windows at Sheffield, it was a borrowing type of project. So we went through the project while we're paying the invoices, we're getting reimbursement from the state through MSBA. And when all is said and done, MSBA comes in, they audit, they hold on to some money. They come in, they audit the whole thing, and then they send us our last amount. But in the meantime, between when we were finalizing the project and when we got the final numbers, we had to go out and borrow. So when we went out to borrow, we borrowed a round amount. And I can't remember exactly what that amount was, but we borrowed the amount that we thought we needed. And then when we got the audit from MSBA, we found that we had about $4,000 too much in borrowing. So that money's sort of been sitting tucked away in an account. And I talked to the town officials about spending this, and I've talked to the auditors about spending it. And so we all decided that with a vote of a school committee, we can use this money, $4,237.10, toward reducing the cost of what we're asking the town for in the second round of Hillcrest Floor project. So if you authorize that, we can pay some of the bills, and then we'll have less money coming in from the town in the next round when it goes to the special town meeting.
Okay, we need to vote that now, right, Joanne?
Yes, because it's not in the business
It's
section.
not in the regular business section.
Mhm.
So I'll entertain a motion to, let's see how you need it phrased.
You can entertain a motion to allocate the $4,237.10 remaining from the Sheffield window project
Yeah,
to the Hillcrest Floor project.
okay, I'll entertain a
Well,
motion.
If Nick just moved it, I'll second it, but okay.
Okay, Nick moved it and Heather seconded it. Any questions or discussions about that before we vote? I believe you had mentioned at the last meeting that it looked like we might have that much left that might be used. So that's a good use. Okay. I'll take a roll call. All those in favor. Let's see. Heather,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Nick,
yes,
John,
Yes.
Haley,
Yes.
Brooke,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
and me. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. The next item is student activity accounts.
I
So
just have, excuse me, I have one question. What was the precise dollar amount, please?
$4,237.10.
4,237.10. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
okay.
John's keeping notes and Sabrina came.
All
up
right.
with-
So the student activity accounts are being, they have to be audited every single year. And so once they're audited, the auditors come back and they have something that we need to change in our guidelines. And so I have those guidelines in the procedures manual for you, and I can just review what we've changed. I added a section on gift cards because the guidelines were silent on that. For the most part, you know, we have always said we don't buy gift cards, because buying a gift card is like buying cash, right? You're buying money with the money, and that just doesn't seem right. Somebody could spend it on anything. If you get a gift card to the grocery store, they could spend it on cigarettes or on alcohol. So we really try to avoid any kind of gift cards, and we've really, you know, stopped it. But we put language in there, so if there is an exception, then we can make that exception. We have a grant right now that it's not a student activity account, but we have a grant, and the grant specifically allows gift cards. So, you know, that's something that we had to do for that particular grant. It's our homeless grant. So we added a section for that. We added a form for it, and the approval to buy the gift cards would have to come through the central office before it's authorized. So that way we know the gift cards are being purchased in advance, even if it is student activity funds. The second item was deficit balances. So our auditors asked that we include information on how we would cover a deficit balance. So we added that information on page 8. It's just a sentence giving ideas of how a deficit balance could be covered. And then approval of clubs, and this is something we have missed, where we're supposed to bring all of the clubs to you each and every year, so that way you can authorize them for the year moving forward. So for the student activity procedures manual, there's a couple of forms and changes in there. And so we just need you to review that this time. That would be your first read. And I would like these to become a part of our school committee policy as a procedure. I think there's an R section to the school committee policy where you can add more specific documentation, not just the policy that outlines it. And so it would be good for this to be added there and for you to vote this at your next meeting.
Actually, our policy requires that we have 3 readings.
Okay, 3 readings. Okay.
Yes. So this would be considered the first, and then we will bring it back 2 more times and vote it after that.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
And then the next item is just approval of those clubs. So we looked through all of the clubs. We eliminated the ones that were not being used. And so these are the clubs that we're asking you to authorize. They're listed here. I won't read through them. Hillcrest does not have a student activity account or any student activity accounts because the oldest students are in 1st grade, and so they're not out raising money. So if you can vote to authorize these clubs for fiscal 23, that would be great.
Okay, if it's acceptable, we can vote the listing of the clubs at this point. If people are comfortable with that, just maybe take a look.
Can I ask questions?
Yes, please.
Why are there clubs for 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade general? Like the rest of the list that makes sense to me, but these grade wide clubs, I'm not clear
Right.
what those are.
It's okay in a student activity account. So if classes are raising funds, this is a place. So like maybe the 2nd grade is planning a trip to go to Sturbridge Village and they can raise money throughout the year. The money goes into this club account and then they use it at the end of the year for that field trip. The difference in the elementary schools and even the middle school is when those grades raise money, the money stays with that grade. Where if you look at the high school clubs, it's the class of 23 and the class of 24, and those funds move with the students. So
Got it.
all elementary schools do have clubs that are part of the student activity account. It just provides a way for them to raise money for things.
Got it. Thank you.
Mhm.
And just I want to understand better why gift cards are being purchased, or what are the scenarios where gift cards may have been purchased?
From student activity accounts, it was like for a homelessness or a fundraiser to provide so I think where I found it, the initial one is students were raising money to provide bags of food to families, but they also wanted to tuck a gift card in there so they could shop
I see.
for more food. And so
Got it.
that's where that came from. And since there was no language in the student activity account, they didn't know it was wrong or not acceptable. So this just adds a process there.
I see. Thanks.
Mhm.
Anyone else? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to authorize the student activity clubs for fiscal year 23 as listed.
So moved. Haley?
Haley, thank you. Second,
Heather?
any other questions or discussion? Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. Heather,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Haley,
Yes.
Brooke,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Thank you. And we will bring the, we have the packet, which is rather large with all the information about the student activity accounts. People can look at in between the meetings, and we will vote them at a later meeting. Vote that as a policy. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, when we come to the other items in our business section that involve Joanne's explanation, we will have her explain it. Thank you. Okay. Moving on, we come to school committee reports. The warrant subcommittee approval, we will need a vote. We have one warrant. It's an accounts payable warrant, which is to pay the bills for the district. It's warrant number 3312. Dated 9/21/22 for the amount of $147,726.21. And you have all the details of that warrant in your packet as well, all the line items. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the signing of that warrant, which I will do.
So moved.
Heather, thank you.
Second, Jennifer.
Jennifer seconded. Any questions about that? Okay, we'll take a roll call. Heather,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Haley,
Yes.
Brooke,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
and myself. Yes, thank you. Okay, moving on to the business section. The first item is a discussion of the Mass Association of School Committee resolutions, and those are in your packet. We will just I'll just go through very quickly with an overview this time. We can vote them at our next meeting because the Mass Association of School Committees Delegate Assembly, which is what votes on these, is held in November at Hyannis. Jennifer and I will be attending that meeting, and Jennifer is our delegate. So she will vote however we decide we'd like her to vote on these issues. If people aren't familiar with these, they're resolutions that a committee comes up with at the state level, that the board of directors of the Association of School Committees thinks would be helpful in supporting education in general. And any school committee that belongs to the group, which most do in Massachusetts, can suggest a resolution or an amendment to a resolution. And then they're distributed, districts are asked to vote on them, and then they're voted on by the delegates at the meeting in November at Hyannis. The first one is regarding a sanctuary law for transgender students. They all have to be stated with all the whereas, but the therefore be it resolved is what explains what they would like to happen. They're calling on the Great and General Court to join with other states in the passage of so-called sanctuary laws to ensure such children and their families have the power of enjoying in safety and tranquility their natural rights and blessings of life as guaranteed by the Constitution of the Commonwealth. And then it also goes on with each of them to give a rationale. Resolution 2, to increase the maximum balance allowed by the Special Education Reserve Fund. They would like the legislature to amend Chapter 40, Section 13E by deleting 2% of the annual net school spending and inserting the amount 5% of the annual net school spending as something that can be kept in the Special Education Reserve Fund for school committees. And that has a good explanation of that below. The third resolution is membership of the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education. Right now, the Massachusetts law prohibits any practicing educators and sitting school committee members from serving on the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education. And that's something that the Mass Association of School Committees has been endeavoring to change for quite a few years so that there's representation on that board. Because people who are licensed educators and public school committee members have expertise that they could lend when they're making decisions at the state level. Resolution 4 is preserving local governance of Massachusetts schools. Right now, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, for several years, in fact, has been able to come in and take over school districts in various towns or cities as they decide is necessary. And the MASC is attempting to restore local governance to those districts. Some of them, for instance, Lawrence was taken over in 2011. And Desi is still there in charge. Just an aside from what has seemed to be happening is once Desi takes over a district, it's very challenging for them to leave. I guess that's the best way I can put it. And I think the Mass Association of School Committees would like to work on that. They want to limit it to no more than 3 years when Desi moves over so that they can't stay indefinitely. I mean, in the case of 11 years.
Now, in Massachusetts, does DESE take control of a system for financial or academic reasons, or a combination, or?
It can be, it generally is more than one, but I believe it can be either or, as well as both. There can be any number of reasons. And sometimes they don't take over completely, but they will be so-called assisting a district with various things.
Like with financial assist, is it that there's financial assistance that comes along with that as well, or?
Not necessarily. Sometimes they
Absolutely.
just tell you what to spend and not help you get any more to spend. That's phrased badly, but Brian, anything to add to that?
Yeah, and I think Jane is correct. That what we've seen typically is that there are usually educational reasons, but when there has been financial dysfunction in a district, the state has been willing to come in, and in some cases it's a combination of, it can be political dysfunction, educational, lack of educational progress, financial, and they do have stages also, John, where there's a level before takeover, which is providing technical assistance, in which case they bring people into the district to work with the existing district staff to try to leverage making the improvements that they want to see.
And I think part of at least what I've learned from participating at the state level is part of the issue with having DESE remove themselves from the equation is generally the findings are not that they have accomplished any more than the district has already been accomplishing on their own. They haven't made the progress that they maintained they would help the district make. So therefore, it's not easy to change it. And the instances where they have, it's usually a large city that's having some issues with their education. They're certainly struggling, but they're doing as much as they can. And DESE has not been able to help that situation, certainly with any speed.
Thank you.
Okay. The next one, Resolution 5, Personal Finance Literacy Education. So that students have exposure to personal financial literacy curricula and graduate from high school with the lifelong knowledge of how to be fiscally responsible to avoid being deterred by financial woes. And Resolution 6, establishment of a regional school assessment reserve fund. They would like the legislature to enact or amend legislation which permits municipalities to establish a regional school assessment reserve fund. That is not allowed at present. So all of those have a fairly lengthy explanation of the why, the wherefore, and what the hope is. Resolutions each year at the statewide conference are voted on, and if they're approved, they're forwarded to DESE or the legislature, whichever they indicate. Sometimes they're considered and something happens because of them, and sometimes they're not. But at least it's a way of putting the ideas out there at the state level. Any questions so far? We'll vote them in October so that when we go to the conference the first week in November, that Jennifer is able to vote in the delegate assembly for us. Christina?
Are these open for comment from us? Is there a process right now of receiving feedback if we have suggestions, or is this just informational share out?
The resolutions are worded as they will be presented on the floor at the delegate assembly. And any school committee can vote to support it or not support it. There is a mechanism to make amendments to the resolutions if a committee desires to do that. So that's certainly possible. And they can be made, I think they have to be made on the floor, but they have to be made in writing as well. So, but when we do vote next time, we certainly will have, people can have plenty of opportunity to tell us what they're thinking about them before we take a vote. If there's anything you'd like to comment on now, that's fine too.
Well, it sounds like they're not so much in draft form, so they might not be receiving, but you know, like for resolution 5, the personal financial literacy resolution, it seems a little loose, and you know, adding in the specification of, you know, that there should be a set of standards that come out with those requirements, I think would be nice to see in there so that there's more specificity around what that means. So I have a few small thoughts like that, but it sounds like they're not, I mean, that wouldn't change my vote. It's just an idea to make it stronger.
Right, and that certainly makes sense. I think generally these are a bit more general, and then the hope is that they will be taken up at the legislative level or by DESE, and then districts can comment on them and help them refine language. And as you say, put in things that would make it less general and more specific.
Mhm.
But to be honest, often they don't really go anywhere. They go to the legislature or DESE, and then some of these, then we submit them next year. And sometimes eventually it works in some ways, but it's a good point. They're not always terribly specific. And sometimes they're even a bit confusing the way they're worded. I will say that.
They were clear. I think resolution 4 is focused on, you know, regaining local control, but I don't see anything about support for school districts that might be struggling. If it's not working to have DESE control, then what is the next, you know, what is the path forward? I think that resolution just begs questions.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep.
Not that it needs to be answered there, like maybe local support is the best way forward, but I think it does kind of leave just a gaping question.
Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes the idea behind it is to get the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to maybe delineate some of their roles to make it more clear and more effective. But I think, again, it's just something that I think has been on the table for a long time. It doesn't seem to happen that once they come in that they leave. It's just tricky, but you're right. It isn't necessarily a solution in itself. Okay, so we will discuss those again at our next meeting, and we'll vote on them so that by the 1st of November, we'll have that done. Next item is presentation of the district annual strategic goals. And those are, Brian, are you going to share your screen with us?
Yep, I can do that. Just take me 1 second. Sorry, I just have to move the faces around. So this is just a brief presentation on the overarching annual district goals, from which I will extract my goals for the superintendency, or for the superintendent's goals for the year. But it's in the context of the second year of our 3-year strategic plan, which is effectively built with the 3 years post-pandemic disruption as the context, and with the additional ARA, CARES Act, and ESSER funding that's available to us over the course of that time frame. And so the primary elements of the context of post-pandemic education, fostering a sense of belonging and partnership amongst students and families, continuously monitor students' understanding, and ensure strong grade appropriate instruction with scaffolding to ensure that students are able to learn new skills even though they may have deficits. For the family engagement objectives for this year, we're going to implement the year 2 objectives from the district's social emotional learning and multi-tiered systems of support plan. The 22-20, over the course of the next 2 school years, the SEL MTSS team that's been put together in the district has identified a total of 20 goals, with 10 of those goals looking to be implemented or completed in the first year. They include things like identifying responsive classroom, developmental design, and other evidence-based practices, and ensure that they're consistently implemented across the district. Create behavior response flowcharts to determine when a student's behavior should be addressed outside the classroom, and identify appropriate personnel to respond. Completing staff surveys of their sense of professional well-being, belonging, and overall school climate. Develop clear sets of expectations for family engagement, for building trusting relationships with parents and guardians. So that's just a small number of the goals that are included in this plan. I'm looking to, after having a conversation, and I know some of you I've had some conversations with about some ideas, including in my interviews a couple of years ago, where as a resident of the community, you know, I think this is, it's a beautiful place to grow up, with a number of resources available for our children and within the community. And I've presented some ideas to the administrative team, and the administrative team felt that we have so much going on in the district with the various resources that we've been able to get through grant writing and other funding sources that have already committed our time. They felt like it was important to do outreach to the community this year rather than take on another project. And so some of those things that I would like to present to the community for discussion include the idea of ensuring that our curriculum provides every student the opportunity from a young age to be on a track to take advanced mathematics, rather than just you know, those students who do well and maybe more affluent on the way. Do we have opportunities in our community potentially to, because of our campuses and the amount of land that we have on our campuses, to basically have, you know, permanent agricultural programs that can also function as basically science labs, hands-on science labs for students throughout the school year and into the summers. And the idea that we could potentially have an opportunity in our district for every student to graduate as a biliterate student with fluency and literacy in both English and Spanish. And so there may be many other ideas out there. So over the course of this year, I'm going to organize and host a couple of those aspirational thinking forums, and gathering that information and consensus will also help me to be able to understand and inform the administrative team about next steps in our district visioning rather than waiting until this 3-year plan is up. For student engagement objectives, I wanted to take the time to evaluate structures and programming to increase access for all students to advanced coursework at the secondary level. For this coming school year, or I guess I should start in 2019, when I was doing a little bit of research on the district just prior to the pandemic, I noticed that in the previous accountability system, that Turner's Falls High School had got 0 out of 4 points in the number or percentage of students who were taking advanced coursework. So we have already added some courses to the curriculum, the hard work of Christopher Barnes, Beth Fortin, and Jean Powers. Courses like all advanced placement courses, courses like anatomy and physiology, and other science and math courses can be identified as challenging coursework. But we've also added courses like in the Innovation Pathways program, an Intro to Engineering and Design course, which DESE considers to be advanced coursework. And so we're looking at other opportunities to add those, as well as examining the structures underneath to make sure that we have the right codes associated with these courses in case there might be a course for which we should be given credit for advanced coursework, but maybe we're not. So really doing an analysis and then reporting back to the committee on next steps. The pandemic has also caused in every school district significant challenges with rates of attendance over the last 2 years. And in addition to the fact that the pandemic itself really impacted our monitoring structures and procedures, as well as our outreach and support. And so we really want all schools to be taking a look at their procedures and to refine those procedures, the communication, and update the outreach and support for students so that we have improved attendance at all grade levels. In the growth and achievement objectives, we're looking to restructure the district and school-based processes for data gathering, analysis, and project progress monitoring. And this really is important, in particular at this time where we've had reading interventionists in the district for the last couple of years. And it has been helpful to students, but there'll be a pretty significant amount of pressure continuing to be applied to assisting students in improving and growing in their reading achievement and grade level. That with the addition this year through ESSER funding of our 3 elementary math interventionists, we felt like it was very important to ensure that we have the tools and the ability to identify those students who need assistance and write not only whole class plans for changes in making instructional changes, but also ensuring that we have individual student plans for those students who are identified as needing math, reading, or social emotional support. At the secondary level, we're also piloting a process of implementing regular process assessments for content writing skills in every content area. And this includes the related arts. And so there'll be 3 assessments given over the course of the year. And this is really something that's data-driven for us as well, that I mentioned at the previous meeting that the Board of Education voted to increase the passing scores in ELA for high school students to be able to graduate. When we look back at our data, there is an indication when MCAS had counted that our students need to work on their writing skills in order to really effectively see that growth in their performance on the tests. And so this was something that we felt like if we were writing across all content areas and using similar criteria for the assessment and providing similar feedback, that students are going to get a more comprehensive practice, and hopefully we'll see better results in their performance in writing, in addition to the fact that it's an exceptionally important skill for post-secondary work, as well as out in the real world and employment. For grade appropriate instruction, we have developed a district elementary mathematics plan to be implemented this year that's similar to the literacy plans that have been developed in the past and modified. And so our objective for this year is to implement that plan and report back to the committee on its implementation, including any adjustments that we might make to the plan for years going forward. We have also gotten some of our iReady assessments funded by a grant, and that allowed us to be able to last year expand the implementation of iReady beyond the elementary level to include the secondary level. So now all students K through 12 are able to be assessed 3 times per year in mathematics and reading, and we want to make sure that those assessments result in student improvement plans as well as whole class adjustments to instruction based on the gathering of that data in mathematics and reading. And then with regard to equity and inclusion, as I mentioned in my report, we're going to participate in and implement the recommendations of the Culturally Responsive Practices Leadership Academy. And we're going to complete and submit a statement of interest for a proposed new school building for the Hillcrest Elementary School. And so just as a brief summary, that's what I'm hoping to accomplish with regard to my focus in my work for the year here in the district. And does anybody have any questions? And I apologize, I think my chair is collapsing. So every once in a while it'll click and switch to the side. So if I fall over, I'm pretty sure that Joanne's here. Somebody can come and check on me.
That's a lot of information to absorb, Brian, at once. Christina?
I feel like I'm asking a lot of questions today, but I'm
No,
gonna
you
keep
should,
going.
definitely.
I saw a few goals that were related to academic achievement, monitoring growth, and it seems like there's good plans in place for ELA and math progress monitoring and pushing students to grow and achieve in those domains. And I'm curious what the goals and objectives are for the other subject areas, science, social studies, arts.
Nothing specifically in the district-wide plan outside of the secondary, cross-curricular writing assessments to be piloted this year. But you may hear a bit more of that in the next school committee meeting when the principals present their school improvement plans. But at the district level, we're largely focusing on making sure that we're examining the foundation skills that students need to be able to apply in those other courses. And Jean, I'm not sure if there's anything that you want to add here to some of the changes that we made in elementary science. That might be one area, and also the commitment on early release days to do science and social studies work at the elementary level.
Yes, so for science in particular, we have a STEM special that students go to once a week, but we looked at all the standards that covers and we kind of compared it to what is not covered. And we developed what I'm calling a playbook of mystery science lessons to ensure that we're covering all the science standards. And we're looking to do something similar over the next year with social studies, but we are asking teachers at the elementary level for half days to do 1 hour of science using mystery science. And then they do 30 to 45 minutes of a social emotional sort of lesson, whether it's a read aloud that they then discuss, and then a social studies lesson. So we're building it in, and it doesn't have the exact data components that we are using right now for reading and math, but we're definitely focusing in on those.
Thank you, Jean. Thanks, Christina. Haley?
Brian, can you draw the connecting line for me between how the Hillcrest plan fits under equity and inclusion? And is that equity between the schools, or just can you explain it a little further?
Yeah, I felt like it belonged under equity and inclusion because one of the biggest challenges that we have at Hillcrest is space to be provided for service providers and students who need a variety of services to help overcome challenges that they have is a huge challenge for us with the limited space that we have in the building. As you may be aware of from the time that you've been here in the district or on school committee, there have already been a ton of arrangements made and sort of smaller building projects that have even taken things like the stage and turned those into offices for service providers. So I felt like it really belonged under equity and inclusion in terms of putting it in one of the 5 buckets for our focus. I don't know if that's helpful, but that was my general thinking, because I think that's probably the most challenging thing that we see at that level. And that's also a school that has, really the largest needs because of the age of the children in their development.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. And I think catching, children in early childhood is pretty critical. So
thanks.
Anyone else? John?
Well, I to answer, I guess, Christina and Nick's observation that, science and history was left out. I know, at least in California, when we switched from the California standards to SBAC, they dropped history and science, and a lot of the standardized tests are just math and English driven. I actually should become more familiar with the Massachusetts test. So my question is, do the Massachusetts standardized tests have a history and science component to them?
They do have a science component that begins as an assessment in grade 5, in grade 8, and then again for graduation.
I see. So it's just 2 years that so I think that's what's driving a lot of the emphasis, which is too bad.
And there was a lot of conversation at the state level about putting a history test in place for roughly 2 decades now, or a social studies test, and it's never come to fruition.
And they really should. I mean, we need a well-rounded curriculum. And I say that as a former school math teacher.
Nick?
I mean, they are part of the curriculum. It's just that I think that the focus on math and reading because of MCAS has really pushed them to the back burner, which is unfortunate, because that was not my experience in school, obviously. Like that math and reading were equally as important as, social studies, science. It really confuses me with like the emphasis on STEM overall in education, like nationally for the last at least 2 decades, how it's just completely sort of fallen to the wayside in Massachusetts public education.
And I think what we're trying to do here too, Nick, is to be able to identify in working with, and now I can't remember the name of the organization, but there are regional labor groups that help us with research in the job market. And one of the things that they've been really clear about, which is part of the reason we've added the courses in the Innovation Pathways programs, is related to the need for people who can handle a variety of scientific skills. And obviously that comes with strong math and strong communication skills. So they're all interwoven. So, the labor boards and the labor research is telling us that we need more students to be prepared to go into STEM fields. So I agree with you. It really does need more focus and emphasis.
I would love to say just a thing here, since I was a previous science teacher. One of the things that I always hoped and dreamed for my students after my experience at Turner's was that emphasis on the math and English. I found that it was hard to focus on teaching the science because of the lower skills in math and English. So having that focus is really, really going to help so that when they get to that secondary level, you can really focus on what you're supposed to be covering in the curriculum instead of reteaching how to do graphs, how to do certain critical thinking skills, that kind of thing.
Thank you. And the state does have curricular standards in all areas of education. They have the standards there, and our curriculum is of necessity designed with those standards in mind. But it's true that, you know, other than math and ELA, it's quite a different approach at the state level.
So then, I mean, the presentation was on the annual strategic goals for the district. And so I guess if there isn't a kind of a general consensus that math or that the other domains beyond math and ELA are important, why would the annual strategic goals not include them in some way? Not to say to the exclusion of ELA and math, but why would they not be there? Is there a rationale there? I mean, is it mainly, are these goals about driving to better MCAS scores? Can you speak a little bit to that rationale?
Yeah, Christina, it really focuses on, I guess I would articulate it the way that Brooke did. We're in the, obviously, in coming out of the pandemic, we've heard a ton about what students are missing. And right now they're missing more of those foundation skills to be able to learn in a variety of content areas. And that's you know, an area we really need to focus on at this time, district-wide, but it doesn't necessarily mean that things aren't changing in the schools. You know, we can't really articulate every goal that we have and everything that we do, but have to be able to identify some to focus our attention and our energy over the course of the year, and then make sure that we provide information back to the committee and to the community about how we did in the course of the year of trying to implement those goals and see them to fruition. But I think that really is part of the thinking, part of my thinking in working with the administrative team and in consulting with teachers, or hearing from teachers about what they're seeing on the ground. So, and I would imagine that's something that, you know, the idea of having conversations in the community about aspirational thinking at the same time will hopefully help us to be able to drive out into other areas. But I think you may see some of those things at the, in any of the school presentations that they're doing for their annual school improvement plans. So it's not totally left out, but in this particular context, it really requires a lot of focus for those founders.
I think it's also important to consider that, especially in those special areas like science and history, there is still a major focus on math and English. There's cross-curricular standards that are supposed to be covered that include more specific to that subject area of math and English skills. So when I heard that as a district goal, I immediately thought of things like the SEI endorsement that every teacher has to have, and recreating some lessons so that students are doing more about language comprehension instead. So that is incorporating that into the curriculum so that there is that focus on the writing, the calculating that might be left to the wayside when it comes to class activities.
Thank you. Anyone else? And so next time we will probably the next meeting, put on the agenda the school committee approval of your goals for the year.
Yep.
Brian?
Yep.
Okay.
And some of these will be repeated, but they'll have a little bit more detail attached.
So these are really a precursor to that as well.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item under business is discussion of proposed dedication of athletic fields. That's policy FF, which is included, and we've mentioned it several times. Actually, we began probably in the spring, I think, mentioning it. And Brian, would you like to elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. So they're back in May. There was a proposal brought before the school committee under policy FF that the softball field at the high school, middle school be named in honor of Gary Mullins for his more than 2 decades of service and having, I think, Gary's teams over the period of his tenure in the district have won 10 state titles. The girls have been very successful over the years, and it's really a remarkable record. And so we brought that proposal that came from 2 members of the community to the school committee in the spring. However, we agreed that June, as people are bailing mentally and emotionally on school, families are getting ready for their summers, it was not the appropriate time to consider voting to approve or not the renaming of the field, because it just seemed like something that required a longer period of consideration for the community. And so I'm recommending that the school committee consider holding a final vote on the matter on October 25th at the school committee meeting so that we can get some information out into the press so that the community is aware of the proposal and has an opportunity to communicate with us if they so desire. At the high school, Christopher Barnes has already held the required meetings and gotten the feedback from the school community. And there's really broad support amongst those stakeholders with whom he met in the spring.
Thank you. So the next item to be covered would be kind of a more wide advertising, as Brian said, so the wider community is aware that this will be taking place as well, so that they will get a chance to know what's happening and weigh in on it. Yes. Anyone have any questions or comments about that? Okay, thank you. The next item is addressing pandemic learning loss, and I believe we have a document, and that's why, hi, Jean. Jean is joining us for that.
Hi, everyone. Again, I'm going to share my screen with the presentation.
And so for the new members of the school committee, I just wanted to make you aware that during the summer months, we stopped with these. We have 2 standing agenda items that we have agreed to continue to keep on the agenda in alternating meetings. One is addressing the learning loss of the pandemic, and the other item is related to issues of equity, either in the schools or among the schools. So thanks, Jean.
Sure. So I just kind of wanted to highlight a couple of the areas that we are looking to focus, and some of them do relate to the goals that we discussed related to reading and math, but I'll go through, and then if you have any questions. So one of the areas where we really tried to support the learning loss was through our summer program this past summer. And I had presented about this a number of times, but I really wanted to bring it back and just identify the fact that we had about 100 elementary students, about 20-ish, 25, between 20 and 25 middle school, and about 30 high school students who took part. And so we, through some of our funding through ESSER, we were able to have teachers recommend students who might not typically come to summer because of they might not have that in their plan, their IEP plan for special education. So they focused in on math and reading and social emotional learning. So there was a lot of work to build kind of those skills back. And we created reports that then teachers who were getting the new students were able to look at and review. So not only did they have information from the prior year's teacher, but also what they worked on over the summer. And we had a number of students who struggled to complete their courses for credit recovery or during the school year for the high school. And so they had this opportunity to get a little bit more small group structure to get support to make up their credits and get them back on track towards graduation. So as Brian had mentioned, looking at iReady data, last year was the first year that we added iReady to middle school and high school. And we're really learning from this and really trying to build in the culture of like why the assessment is important. And we're using this beginning of the year data to help drive instruction. iReady assesses math and assesses reading. And the way the test works is you're supposed to get 50% of it wrong. Basically, it adjusts. So if I do well, I go up. If I struggle, I go down, and it kind of finds that just right spot. And then if students in K-8, they have an instructional platform that goes along with this. So this is another thing that we're really building in. We're building it into study skills during middle school classes, as well as during some of the reading and math time with elementary, where students have a specified plan that they get based on their diagnostic, which is another reason why I really encourage them to do well and try their hardest on it, because if they're kind of just clicking through, they're going to get something that's going to be really easy and it's not going to really meet their needs. So we're building this in. And then I think one of the biggest things that we were trying to emphasize, and one of the goals really is, okay, so we do this assessment, like now what, right? I think our elementary teachers are really using this data well because they've been using it for a couple of years, but how do we really help our middle and high school faculty and staff make this usable data? So that's another area we're focusing in on. As Brian mentioned, we have a literacy plan that was written last summer by a number of teachers and the principals. And this past spring, I worked with a group of 6 elementary staff to write a math plan. And it's very detailed. It has a lot of information about like our philosophy for education in math and literacy, both plans, as well as when are we assessing, and then a scope and sequence. So like, what are we teaching when? And it's really a tool for our staff to follow, but it also really is a way to really emphasize what we do with math and literacy at the elementary level. The math plan highlights a lot of the components of the math interventionist, because that's a new role for us this year. And really, we emphasize teachers to look at this, principals share them out, at the beginning of this year, took some time during staff meeting to dig through and make sure that folks felt really comfortable with the plan moving forward for elementary and for math. And like I said earlier, there is a science playbook where we've aligned what the mystery science lessons are for the standards that aren't taught in our STEM special. And I'm happy to present on that at another time if folks would like that. So here's a new thing we did this year, and we've done it a little bit, I guess, sporadically, but this is the first year we made this really a consistent practice. So at the end of the year and kind of the last couple of weeks, our teachers at the elementary level made reading groups to start the year. So our assessment window is like mid-September through the end of October. And so instead of waiting until the end of October to really know, 1, what students need to be pulled for intervention, or 2, what kind of skills teachers need to emphasize in the classroom, we made these groups at the end of the year and shared them with the next year's teachers. And I'm actually really excited about this because it's across all 3 elementary schools. We made it consistent, and we've already seen some jumps for students because we started it off right away. So this is a practice we're going to continue to do. And we have a data cycle where our next data meeting will be on November 2nd, where we're going to look at all the fall data for math and reading, and then make action plans almost for every student, really, that what they need to really be successful. So this was a great addition to our work this year. And we are part of a MTSS, which stands for Multi-Tiered Systems of Support Academy. This is through DESE and through Math Recovery. And we were part of this 3 years ago, and we ended the grant this spring. And we were very fortunate. Not many schools get a second round, especially right after a round of 3 years of being in this academy. But I really was talking with them about starting the math interventionist program and how, this could be a really great thing for us. And so we got approved. So the 3 math interventionists are taking a course. It's called Math Recovery Specialists. This is a year-long intensive course where they'll be working one-on-one with a first grade student. And it's 100 hours that they need to log. And basically they create a case study for this student. So beyond the other things that they're doing, with pulling small groups and working with classroom teachers, they have this course that's happening, and that it's really going to build our district skills in looking at how we support students in their understanding of math. We also have access to some shorter courses. They're called AVMR, so Advantage Math Recovery 1, 2, and then a course on fractions. And these courses are free and available to our staff. So our goal is to try to get as many folks trained in this over the next few years. You can see we have 17 that are trained in AVMR 1, 12 in AVMR 2, and 4 in fractions. I think that's as of today. And some of those are the same people that have been trained in multiple, but we still want to expand it. And just so you get a sense of like, what does this look like? The Math Recovery Specialist course is a $6,000 course. And we have 3 of them. And the math recovery classes are each $1,000. So we're really, really lucky to be part of this work. And this slide kind of just explains, a little bit more about what the course is. They really focus on early numeracy, really in the K to 2 range is the focus, so that we kind of back to that conversation about building those foundational skills. So things become really rote and repetitive for students, so that they're able to apply their math knowledge as they get older. And then kind of just some, other things that we look at. Elementary, we have a number of other reading assessments. One that looks at core phonics. Geodes is a reading assessment that we're going to be building this year. It's based off of one of our curricular pieces that goes along with foundations, and as well with Wit and Wisdom, which is our ELA program. So building kind of the phonics and ELA together. We've developed some interview-based assessments. So teachers are really like sitting down with individual students and like going through a question, but then really analyzing like what's the student thinking. And then AVMR, what I just talked about, has assessments. So, and Brian had spoken about secondary, that there is, the common writing assessments, and then MCAS. So we do look at MCAS data. And I think one of the biggest things that I emphasize with teachers and principals is it is a piece of data. We have lots of data, but we want to make sure that we include it because it's one of the things that the state looks at. And so it's really important for us to look at the MCAS data and see if it aligns with what we're seeing in our data assessments. So we will be doing, once it's officially released, we'll be able to really dig in with teachers and look at this and make some changes, but also, again, it's really adding it to the repertoire of all the data that we have to look at for individual students. So I agree with your statements about math and reading being very heavy in our work, and building on those as we grow. But I know that thinking about pandemic learning loss and really trying to find those foundational skills. And I think the other biggest thing is to catch the things that might be could keep students really far behind, catch them really early by doing these assessments. So that's kind of where we are and what we're going to be doing this year to continue to build on pandemic learning loss. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Jean.
Thank you, Jean. And if people have questions later, please don't hesitate. Please, if you think of something later that you'd like a little more information about, or I'm sure, everyone, and I know Jean is welcoming that.
Yes, definitely. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Jean?
Oh, yeah.
So those math intervention specialists, are those under the ESSER grant? Is that correct? Is that why it says we're a little unclear about whether that will continue for next year?
So we definitely are going to have the positions for this year and next year. The question about whether that course that they're going to take, so they have a part 1 and a part 2 of the course. They're taking part 1 this year, and sometimes it takes teachers 2 years to do that because they have to get 100 hours. So they may take the part 2 next year, but we do have the 3 positions in ESSER for the next 2 years, and hopefully we can, figure out a way to build it in and grow that position.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much, Jane.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gene.
Next on the business agenda, update on the Six-Town Regional Planning Board. I don't know if you have anything new, Brian. I know Bill was not able to join us tonight. He is our.
He's actually, yeah, he's at that meeting. I believe their meeting was scheduled for tonight. I could be wrong, but
It was.
so I would imagine we're going to want to put this on the agenda for the next meeting and assume that he would have an update.
Yes, I think he felt that. So yes, I'll put that on the list. Okay. Next, we need to review and update the administrative job description that Brian included, and we do have to vote on that. School committee does have to approve of job descriptions and any changes in given job descriptions.
So this job description is what I attached to the agenda as a document. Any of the recommended changes, it is for the executive assistant to the superintendent and school committee. So with the last time it was updated was when Sabrina was hired for the position. So I took it out and took a look through it with an eye toward those things that might be outdated or things that needed to be included. So for example, the salary range at the time was 42,000 to 48,000 plus the stipend for school committee. I've updated that salary range from 45,000 to 60,000. I've added things like assist the superintendent in responding to requests for information under the Freedom of Information Act, because many schools have gotten tons of those, and it wasn't included necessarily in the job description. And then the only other items in here are related to ensuring that we're using the correct language around, we've shifted, it's not just state ethics training, but ensure that all employees have completed the mandatory trainings that comes out of this office. And that can be everything from life-threatening allergies, state ethics law, mandatory reporting, Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act that we do in an online system called the General Compliance Network, or GCN training. And then adding in removing the name of the software that we used to use to keep staffing, which I believe was called Visio, and just change that to what we currently use, which is just maintaining staffing charts that include years of service, seniority, licensure, credentials, and other relevant information, including managing not just the professional development reimbursement requests, but also including course reimbursement and salary column and credits. They enter staffing changes into our personnel software called Frontline, and removing this position as a liaison legal staff, given that it's only the school committee chair, myself, or Joanne who contacts the attorneys as liaisons, unless we give permission to, if Jane gives permission to one of the other committee members, or if we give permission to an administrator to make a phone call or do a consult or a meeting with the attorneys. So it's just an updating to the job description and to the salary range.
And the changes are highlighted in yellow.
Yes.
Yes. So I will entertain a motion to approve the updated administrative job description.
So moved. Heather.
Second.
And
Haley,
Haley.
second.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, we'll take a roll call. Heather,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Haley,
Yes.
Brooke,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
and me, yes. And Jennifer had to leave. She did let me know, so she does know that.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item, we need to declare some equipment as surplus. We also need to vote on that. There is a handout. It consists of the following items have been deemed surplus equipment and it'll be sold to the highest bidder because we recently purchased some new equipment for our wood shop, and we need to dispose of the older wood shop equipment. And there they are. Do you want to explain them, Joanne, or just repeat what they're called?
I'll just repeat what they're called. There's a compound miter saw and a type 1 table saw. So there is still some value to these, and so I'd like to put them out to bid and get people to come in and take a look, and we can get a few bucks for them.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to declare this equipment as surplus.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, I think I heard Nick and
Heather.
Heather. I didn't look up quick enough. All right, any questions about that?
Just a quick question. The funds from selling these would go back into the same program that purchased them, or to cover the cost of the new equipment, or would they be redistributed to a different program?
The funds have to go into the general all-purpose fund, so they just become part of our overall revenue.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. We'll take a roll call. Heather,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Haley,
Yes.
Brooke,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
and me. Yes, thank you. Next item, acceptance of scholarship donations. We have a sheet from the our treasurer, Cynthia. In August, Bernard Plaza class of 1957 scholarship received a donation from Maria Bonsavage, sister of Bernard Plaza, in the amount of $2,770.05. The current scholarship was over $14,000, and the annual awards go to a student with an interest in world languages. The
Looks
next,
like the second item is not actually a scholarship, Jane. It's just a donation to the athletics program.
okay, I was just going to say that looks more like, but we have to accept that as well, right?
Yep.
So we have to accept the two donations. This second one is the TFHS athletic program received $150 from 3 donors in memory of Edward Kerswig Jr. The donors are Sharon and Barry Whitehouse, Lynn and John O'Reilly, and Barry and Constance Cormier. So I'll entertain a motion to accept those donations.
So moved.
Heather, yep, thank you.
A second.
And Nick, any questions or comments on that? Okay, Heather,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Haley,
Yes.
Brooke,
Yes.
thank you, Christina,
Yes.
and me, thank you. And the last one is we have a budget transfer that needs to be voted. And you can give us a little information on that if you would, Joanne?
Yes. The technology education supplies, the teacher asked if we could transfer money from that account into the theater arts program. They use the money to, prepare the set for the play or for the musical. And so it's basically the money getting used by the same people, but they're just transferring it to the theater program, so that way it's allocable there. And it's the wood shop that often makes the set, so they're still using the money, they're just using it in a different department.
I will accept and entertain a motion to make that budget transfer.
So moved.
Heather, thank you.
I'll second.
And Brooke, thank you. Any questions, discussion? Okay, roll call. Heather,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Haley,
Yes.
Brooke,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
and myself. Yes. And just for people who might wonder why we always do that and go through name by name, Mass General Law requires that we take votes in that manner. So we do. Okay, moving along. We have 2 sets of minutes to approve, one from August 23rd, 2022, and one from September 9th, 2022. If it's acceptable, I'll entertain a motion to approve them together.
So moved.
Heather, thank you.
Okay.
And Nick, any discussion about the minutes? Okay, roll call. Heather?
Sorry, I keep pressing the wrong button. The
there.
arrow. Yeah. Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Haley,
Yes.
Brooke,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
and myself. Thank you. And the dates for our next scheduled meetings, the regular meetings are October 11th and October 25th. The open meeting begins at 6:30. If we will be needing an executive session, it will begin at 6. And if there are any agenda requests, Brian and Bill, who is our vice chair, and I usually meet on the Monday of the week previous to the Tuesday meeting. So we'll be meeting the Monday before, a week plus a day before the next one. So if you have any requests, please just let us know. Get them to either of us, any of us, and we'll be happy to put them on the agenda. And we also have a list of things that we are following up on that we will put on the agenda as well. Anything else? Okay, we accomplished a lot of work this evening. We really did a lot. It was longer than some. So if you're new, it's not usually this long. But we did get a lot done. Thank you all. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Heather?
Second, Haley.
Haley? I saw Heather's light up, so I got confused. Need a second?
Oh,
I
I did move
Did
it
it.
and Haley
Okay.
seconded.
Okay, Heather and Haley, thank you. Okay, Heather,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Haley,
Yes.
Brooke,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
and me. Yes, so it's unanimous. Thank you all very much.